Have you ever been disrespected? Felt that sting of someone treating you as if you don't matter? I know I have. And in those moments, our first instinct is often to fight back, to lash out in anger, or maybe even to plot revenge. But what if I told you there's a more powerful way to respond, one that doesn't just change how they see you, but transforms how you see yourself? Before I dive deeper, I want you to stay with me for the next few minutes. What I'm about to share isn't the typical advice you'll find in most videos. This isn't about quick tricks or manipulation tactics. This is about something far more profound, a philosophy that has guided some of history's greatest minds through their darkest hours. So before you're tempted to skip ahead, give me just a few minutes to lay the groundwork for what could be a complete shift in how you handle disrespect. Today, we're going to explore how to make people genuinely regret disrespecting you, not through revenge or pettiness, but through the timeless wisdom of Stoicism. This ancient philosophy offers us powerful tools to transform disrespect from something that wounds us into something that strengthens us. The true nature of disrespect. When someone disrespects you, what's really happening? On the surface, it seems simple. They're treating you poorly, dismissing your worth or violating your boundaries. But dig deeper and you'll find that their disrespect often reveals more about them than it does about you. As the Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "Remember that it is we who torment ourselves, that no one else can torment us. That is, no one can harm us unless we permit them to do so." This insight is crucial. It reminds us that while we can't control how others treat us, we absolutely can control how we interpret and respond to their actions. When someone disrespects you, they're showing you their current limitations, their lack of understanding, their insecurities, perhaps even their own pain. The Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius put it perfectly. When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, "The people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. They are like this because they cannot tell good from evil." This doesn't mean we should excuse poor behavior or allow ourselves to be treated badly. Rather, it means understanding that disrespect often comes from a place of confusion or suffering. This perspective gives us power. It allows us to respond from a place of strength rather than wounded ego. The Stoic response to disrespect. So what exactly is the Stoic approach to being disrespected? It begins with a fundamental shift in perspective. Instead of seeing disrespect as something happening to you, see it as something happening near you. It's an event in the world that you're witnessing, but it doesn't define you or diminish your worth. As Seneca, another great Stoic philosopher, advised, the greatest remedy for anger is delay. When disrespected, our instinct is to react immediately, to defend our honor or strike back. But the Stoic pauses. They create space between stimulus and response. In that space lies our power to choose a response that serves us rather than one that escalates the situation. Now, I know what you might be thinking, but if I don't react, aren't I letting them get away with it? Won't they think I'm weak? This is where many people misunderstand Stoicism. The Stoic response isn't about becoming a doormat or suppressing your feelings. It's about responding in a way that maintains your dignity and demonstrates your strength of character. As Marcus Aurelius reminds us, the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. When someone disrespects you, they're often expecting, even hoping for, an emotional reaction. They want to see you lose control, to know they've gotten under your skin. By maintaining your composure, by responding with dignity rather than reactivity, you immediately subvert their expectations. The power of dignified silence. One of the most powerful responses to disrespect can be a dignified silence, not a sullen, awkward silence, but the confident quiet of someone who knows their own worth too well to be baited into petty exchanges. As a Epictetus observed, "If anyone tells you that a certain person speaks ill of you, do not make excuses about what is said of you, but answer, 'He was ignorant of my other faults, else he would not have mentioned these alone.'" This humorous perspective reminds us that others' opinions need not disturb our inner peace. When you choose not to react with immediate anger or defense, you create a mirror that reflects the other person's behavior back to them. In the absence of your reaction, they're left to confront their own words and actions. Often this silence speaks volumes, communicating clearly that you find their behavior beneath response. I remember once being in a meeting where a colleague made a dismissive comment about an idea I'd proposed. Instead of defending myself or firing back, I simply maintained eye contact, gave a small smile, and then continued with my point, as if their comment hadn't affected me at all. The room grew uncomfortable, not for me, but for them. By the end of the meeting, they approached me to apologize, explaining they'd been stressed about another project and hadn't meant to be harsh. That's the power of dignified silence. It often leads others to reflect on their behavior in a way that no amount of arguing could accomplish. Building intrinsic worth. At the heart of the Stoic approach to handling disrespect is a deep investment in your own intrinsic worth. When your sense of value comes from within, from your character, your principles, your actions, then external validation or criticism loses much of its power over you. As Epictetus put it, make it your goal to do the right thing for the right reason, without attachment to the results of your actions. Whatever happens, celebrate the opportunity to practice virtue. This means developing a clear understanding of your own values and living in alignment with them. When you know that you're living according to your principles, others' disrespect becomes less threatening because you're not dependent on their approval. Think about it this way. If someone criticizes a choice you've made, but you know deep down that you made that choice based on your most cherished values, how much power does their criticism really have? You might still feel the initial sting, but it won't shake your foundation. This is what Seneca meant when he said, "He who is his own friend will not be another's slave." When you develop strong self-respect and self-trust, you're less likely to tolerate disrespect from others, not because you react aggressively, but because you calmly maintain boundaries that reflect your self-worth. Responding with excellence, one of the most powerful ways to make someone regret disrespecting you, is to respond with excellence. This doesn't mean becoming perfect or never making mistakes. It means approaching your interactions and responsibilities with integrity, skill, and dedication. Marcus Aurelius advised, "The best way to avenge yourself is to not be like that." If someone has treated you poorly, demonstrate through your actions the kind of respect and dignity you would have preferred to receive. When you respond to disrespect by raising your standards rather than lowering them, you create a contrast that speaks for itself. You show through your behavior what respect and dignity look like, and in doing so, you often inspire others to rise to your level rather than pulling you down to theirs. I've seen this play out countless times in professional settings. Someone dismisses a colleague's ideas or speaks over them in meetings. Rather than becoming bitter or retaliatory, the disrespected person continues to produce excellent work, to support team goals, to communicate with clarity and respect. Over time, their consistent excellence becomes undeniable, and the person who disrespected them often comes to recognize their error, sometimes explicitly, sometimes implicitly, through a gradual change in behavior. The art of boundaries. Crucial element of the Stoic response to disrespect is setting and maintaining clear boundaries. This is where many people misunderstand Stoicism. They think it means passively accepting whatever happens. But true Stoicism involves discerning what's in your control and what isn't, then taking decisive action in the areas where you do have influence. As Epictetus taught, make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens. When it comes to disrespect, you can't control whether someone initially treats you poorly, but you can control how you respond in the moment, whether you continue to engage with that person, what boundaries you establish for future interactions. Setting boundaries isn't about punishment or retaliation. It's about clearly communicating what you will and won't accept in your relationships. This can be done with calm dignity rather than heated emotion. For example, if someone consistently interrupts, you might calmly say, "I'd appreciate being able to finish my thought before you respond." If they continue the behavior, you might choose to engage with them less or in different contexts. Boundaries communicate self-respect. When you set them clearly and maintain them consistently, you teach others how to treat you. And often, the person who disrespected you comes to regret their behavior, not because you punished them, but because they realize they've damaged a relationship with someone who values themselves. The power of forgiveness. Perhaps the most counterintuitive aspect of the Stoic response to disrespect is forgiveness, not the weak, doormat kind of forgiveness that says it's okay when it isn't, but the strong, clear-eyed forgiveness that recognizes human fallibility, including our own, and chooses to release resentment for our own well-being. Marcus Aurelius advised, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. They are like this because they cannot tell good from evil. But I have seen the beauty of good and the ugliness of evil, and have recognized that the wrongdoer has a nature related to my own." This recognition of shared humanity doesn't excuse harmful behavior, but it does help us respond to it with wisdom, rather than reactive anger. Forgiveness in this context means recognizing that holding on to resentment hurts us more than it hurts the other person. As Seneca put it, the greatest remedy for anger is delay. When we pause before reacting to disrespect, we create space to choose a response that serves our well-being, and sometimes that response is to forgive and move forward unburdened by grudges. I've experienced this in my own life when dealing with a family member who often made dismissive comments about my career choices. Initially, these comments stung, and I would either argue back or silently seethe. But over time, I came to understand that their comments reflected their own insecurities and limited perspective, not my worth or the value of my choices. When I shifted from resentment to compassion, something remarkable happened. The comments still came occasionally, but they no longer had power over me. And eventually, as they saw that their words couldn't shake my confidence, the frequency of those comments diminished. Now, years later, this same family member actually comes to me for career advice, a transformation I never could have achieved through anger or retaliation. The living example. Let me share a story that illustrates these principles in action. A friend of mine, let's call him David, was part of a creative team at his company. During a major presentation, a colleague interrupted him repeatedly, dismissed his ideas in front of clients, and even took credit for some of his work. Everyone in the room noticed it. The tension was palpable. Many expected David to either lash out or withdraw. He did neither. Instead, David maintained his composure. When interrupted, he would wait for a pause and then calmly say, "As I was explaining," and continue his point. When his ideas were dismissed, he didn't become defensive, but instead asked clarifying questions. "Could you help me understand your concerns about this approach?" When the meeting ended, several people approached David to express their discomfort with how he'd been treated. But David didn't join in criticizing his colleague. Instead, he focused the conversation back on the project and the team's goals. In The weeks that followed, David continued to produce excellent work and to treat his colleague with professional courtesy, not forced friendliness, but basic respect. He didn't gossip about the incident or try to turn others against this person. He simply maintained his boundaries while continuing to excel at his work. What happened next is telling. The colleague who had disrespected him began to seem uncomfortable around David, not because David was cold or retaliatory, but because David's consistent dignity made the colleague's behavior look increasingly petty by contrast. 3 weeks after the incident, the colleague asked to speak with David privately and offered a genuine apology. This is perhaps the most powerful way to make someone regret disrespecting you, by showing them through your response what dignity, integrity, and strength of character truly look like. The inner victory. The Stoics understood something profound about human nature. External achievements, wealth, status, power, are ultimately less satisfying than internal virtues like wisdom, justice, courage, and moderation. As Epictetus said, wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. When someone disrespects you, they've shown you their current limitations. When you respond with dignity, you've demonstrated your strength. This isn't about winning in the conventional sense. It's about maintaining your integrity regardless of how others behave. The ultimate victory isn't making someone apologize or changing their opinion of you. It's developing such a solid sense of your own worth that external validation and criticism lose their power over your peace of mind. As Marcus Aurelius wisely observed, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. This inner victory is available to you regardless of the outcome of any specific interaction. Whether the person who disrespected you ever recognizes their error is secondary to your own growth through the experience. Practical steps to apply these principles. So how do you put these Stoic principles into practice when faced with disrespect? Here are some concrete steps. First, practice the pause. When disrespected, take a breath before responding. This creates space between stimulus and response, allowing you to choose your reaction rather than being driven by instinct. Second, ask yourself, what virtue can I practice in this moment? Courage, patience, justice, wisdom. Frame the disrespect as an opportunity to strengthen your character rather than as merely an offense against you. Third, respond rather than react. A response is thoughtful and aligned with your values. A reaction is automatic and often emotional. Choose your words and actions deliberately. Fourth, maintain appropriate boundaries. Communicate clearly what you will and won't accept in your relationships. Do this with calm dignity rather than heated emotion. Fifth, focus on what you can control, your perceptions, decisions, and actions, rather than trying to control others' behavior or opinions. And finally, practice forgiveness, not for the other person's benefit, but for your own peace of mind. As Epictetus said, to accuse others for one's own misfortune is a sign of want of education. To accuse oneself shows that one's education has begun. To accuse neither oneself nor others shows that one's education is complete. Conclusion: making someone feel sorry for disrespecting you isn't about revenge or making them suffer. It's about responding in such a way that they come to recognize the error in their behavior, ideally without your having to point it out to them. The Stoic approach offers us a pathway to respond to disrespect with dignity, strength, and wisdom. It allows us to transform potentially hurtful situations into opportunities for growth, and it helps us develop the kind of character that naturally commands respect. As Seneca wisely observed, the greatest remedy for anger is delay. When faced with disrespect, take that pause. Choose your response with care. And remember that how you respond to disrespect says more about your character than the disrespect says about your worth. Marcus Aurelius gives us perhaps the most powerful perspective of all. When another blames you or hates you, or when people say disturbing things about you, approach their souls, penetrate within, and see what sort of people they are, you will realize that there is no reason to be concerned that they have this or that opinion about you. By applying these Stoic principles, you will not only handle disrespect more effectively, you'll develop a kind of inner strength that makes you increasingly resilient to disrespect in the first place. And that, perhaps, is the greatest victory of all. Remember, true strength isn't shown in how loudly you can respond to disrespect, but in how steadily you can maintain your dignity in the face of it. Practice these principles with patience and persistence, and watch as not only your relationships, but your relationship with yourself transforms for the better.